if you just do it, it'll turn out okay. And today, I am with biologist PZ Meyers. Like to introduce yourself to the crowd, to those who
Or
may not
or
know who you
are
are.
you? Or are you with PZ Meyers? There, there's two of us, you know.
I know one. I
One
know.
is evil, one is good.
Which one are you?
And well, I'm not going to tell you. You'll have to figure it out as we have our conversation.
All right. So, all right. I'll take you yourself to the crowd.
Okay. Yes, I am PZ Meyer's evil twin. He's the guy who has a professorship at the University of Minnesota Morris, who's currently teaching genetics and also teaches cell biology and developmental biology and all these other fun things. And then in his spare time goes hunting spiders. The spiders are coming out. It's finally happening. Things are thawing in Minnesota. We got to like 7 or 8 degrees centigrade, which is just
If
wonderful.
Minnesota's thawing, you know it's warm.
That's right. And it's warm enough for the spiders to be starting to appear outside. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I've also got a a little project in my backyard. I created some refugia for spiders and other creepy crawlies, just logs and rocks and things in the backyard that have been buried under a couple of feet of snow all winter. And
So
either
you got your own little terrarium back there and out in nature.
well, it's not a terrarium; it's the whole of nature.
Well, true, but
I just provided little hiding holes for all the bugs and things. And I'm hoping to get out tomorrow and flip some of those over and see if there's anything under them.
cool.
I'm kind of afraid it might be like Al Capone's vault because I set it up late in the fall, and that may not have been soon enough for them to get comfortable in there. But we'll find out. We'll take a look. They got to go somewhere in the winter, right?
Yeah. Why not your logs?
Sure. Or your house. They're all everywhere.
Yeah. And if they didn't make it, you can always feed them to another insect for protein.
I feed the spiders insects, not
Uh,
vice versa. Uh, Although there are things like wasps that will dine on spiders. No, it's I raise fruit flies, and I've just started a project to raise black soldier flies.
so
And
do you
feed the
raise
spiders.
fruit to give the flies?
No, there's a standard medium you can just buy from Carolina Biological. You can get everything from Carolina. Uh, so
Okay. It's
so
like you
yeah,
raise
we get stuff that's kind of like instant oatmeal, and you just mix that up with a little
oh,
water
nice.
and put it into a
Uh,
vial, and you throw in a fly, and it starts laying eggs in it.
uh, I was like you can make your own little food chain thing. Raise the fruit flies, then get the fruit flies to the spiders, and just
That's
have
the end of the chain, though, because then I keep the spiders.
you don't eat the spiders anything.
No,
You
the spiders are there to produce babies for me to experiment on.
uh, now you said that your main course of study is uh, embryology development.
Yep, it's my main interest. So what I'm trying to do with the spiders is I'm trying to get a thriving colony that will produce lots of egg sacs regularly for me, so that I can work on the embryos. The embryos of spiders are actually kind of nice to work with because they're all synchronously laid. So you open up the egg sac and you got 100 different embryos, but they're all of exactly the same age. So you can do experiments on different stages and things like that. So that's kind of fun.
So are you trying to like the artificially select breed the spiders, or just randomly?
No, I'm just looking at natural variation. So one of the projects that I'm hoping to get into this summer is there's a lot of different kinds of spiders out there, of course, And the standard developmental biology model for spiders is a species called Peristeatoda tepidariorum. And I'm raising that in the lab. And Peristeatoda is kind of pretty. It's got these mottlings all over the place. So if you look at the abdomen, it's got these broken up circumferential stripes. So it's kind of modeled that way. And I've been really interested in other species that's found around here, a related one called Steatoda triangulosa, which builds this beautiful little zigzag stripe down the side of the abdomen. And so one question is just, how do they do that? I've done some preliminary stuff, and I see there's these little foci where pigmentation starts to form. And so I'm figuring I could document those steps. But then what I also want to do is, as an evolutionary model, how do we relate these to these other spider species? How do we do this when we got Peristeatoda, which is spots, and we got Steatoda triangulosa, which has zigzags, and there's another common species around here, Steatoda borealis, which makes this cute little silvery. It looks like the Good Guys logo in Star Wars, if you know what I'm talking about. So how do you shift between those three? Mm-hmm. Oh, and hey there, Rory Katz. How are you doing? Yeah, everyone overlooks me. I blame PZ Meyers, that rascal.
So spiders are, talking about developmental, spiders are protostomes. Protostomes?
Yes.
That's the name. I'm terrible pronunciations. They're the mouth first group.
Correct.
Unlike us, who are the butt first
group.
Group.
Yes. So they're classic protostomes. They've also got interesting patterns of development. They start off segmented, and then the segments start to fuse together, and which is kind of like us. We start off segmented, and you wouldn't tell by looking at us, except if you look at things like spines and ribs. So the other interest I have, though, is, and this is something new. This is something I just started getting into in the last couple of years, is developmental ecology. That's a field that's kind of booming right now. What it is looking at the relationship between developmental processes and ecological processes, recognizing that different organisms contribute in different ways to the environment in different stages in their development. Spiders are pretty straightforward, but other organisms have much more complicated interactions with the environment. The cool thing about spiders, though, that appealed to me for this purpose is that there are so many different species of spiders. It's been kind of mind-blowing for the last couple of years as I try to figure out who the heck these spiders are, because it's just bewildering how many different species you can find out there, how many you can find right in your own house. I found something like 6 or 7 different species of spiders that live here in my house with me, and also probably in your house as well.
Do they help you pay rent and stuff, or pay for?
No, I let them live for free, just for entertainment values.
Start charging them. I bet they have the. Hey, when you live here, you gotta start paying some of the electricity bill that keeps you warm at night.
Okay, we got a question here. Are there any spiders that aren't decapods? No, that doesn't make any sense. You're thinking like decapod crustaceans?
You guys, deca mean 10?
Yeah, spiders are octopods. So, yeah, I mean, you could say they have 10 appendages if you count the pedipalps, but those are parts of those are mouth parts, and we tend to count those very differently from the appendages farther back.
So, are all spiders like I don't say carnivores?
All but one that I know of. There's one species, I think it's a Brazilian species that actually digests plant sap.
Hmm.
But otherwise, yeah, they're all obligate predators, carnivores. Yes, they're patient ambush. Eddie McCoy says, yeah, they're patient ambush predators. That's also one of the nice things about them. If you're working with them and if you're studying behavior, there are some species, of course, that are very very active that just scurry all over the place, like jumping spiders. The spiders I study are entirely ambush predators, and it's just marvelous to me that I can go in the lab and I can get one of the containers that holds a spider in it, and I can open it, and they are not going to leap out at me, and they're not going to run away. They'll just sit there waiting for food to come to them. So it makes them kind of nice to study that way. Just this morning, I had a zebra jumping spider that my wife caught and was trying to take photographs of it. And boy, they do not hold still. They just scurry all over the place. So I prefer my sedentary little ambush spiders, cobweb weavers.
Uh, so, so do you have like any trapdoor spiders or anything?
No, I don't have any of those. Yeah, here in Minnesota, we're a little bit limited. I mean, there's still something like 700 species of spiders in the state, but the fact that it's so cold kind of limits things. That here, what I generally get is I get the Therodiadids I mentioned, like Parasteatota and Steatota. Those are the ones that look kind of like black widows. But we don't actually have black widows here. They can't stand the winters.
Uh,
Uh,
so,
yes.
so are very few spiders like cold resistant?
What do you mean by cold resistant?
I mean, I mean, they can like survive or something, or thrive. Not say survive or thrive when the temperature is not
Yeah.
a little lower.
Lots of spiders are somewhat cold resistant. So Parasteatota, for instance, makes antifreeze.
Ah,
They actually can handle down to about -3, -5 degrees centigrade before kicking the bucket. And that's all you really need. If even in Minnesota, where we got down to -30 and things like that, if you can survive those kinds of temperatures near freezing, what you have to do is go find a nice hidey hole, like under a log in my backyard. I keep telling the spiders, yeah, you could be thriving back there under a log or a rock, anything where you're under the snowpack, because under the snowpack it'll be about 0 degrees centigrade, and so if you can handle that, you'll just kind of go quiescent for the winter, and then when things warm up, you'll wake up and scurry out and go looking for things to eat. But yeah, otherwise, spiders don't thrive at those low temperatures. And it makes sense as well because their primary food source is going to be insects. And insects don't thrive at those temperatures either. So you might as well go take a nap for 3 or 6 months
yeah.
and wait for the insects to emerge.
Of course, I don't know. Do any of your spiders eat like bigger prey, like rodents or birds or anything like that?
No, oh, that'd be wait. The spiders I work with are little bitty guys. They're 6 to 10 millimeters across, so they're
Uh,
not huge. They do eat bigger prey than themselves. So, like I've fed them waxworm larvae, which are about this big, and it's kind of like an episode of Dune because the spiders will jump on these and ride them as the worm is bucking and writhing around. They'll be injecting poison into them and waiting for them to die.
so you said you studied the embryos of spiders. Like, like a very powerful microscope or something, or how do you study? How do you when you look
Oh,
at those?
relatively powerful. I mean, they're like half a millimeter to millimeter long. So you don't need an immense microscope to do this. You don't need a confocal laser scanning microscope, for instance. You can actually get quite a ways into looking at them with just a standard dissecting scope.
Ah,
So like a 25x or something like that is good enough. If I want to look and get closer details, I will put them on my big microscope where I've got like a 40x water immersion or a 100x oil lens. And that's if you want to just zoom in and look at something like mouth parts or pigment granules on the surface of the embryo. That's what you use.
so it takes us 9 months to be fully developed as a person. How long did it take a spider from sperm and egg to fully
Uh,
move
well,
outside?
it depends. It depends on the species again. The spiders I study, it takes about a little less than 2 weeks for embryological development, and then they emerge from their egg sac. But they're tiny, and then that's a dispersal stage. That's when they start spewing out silk to go parachuting and fly all over the place and find new places to nestle down. These spiders would, for instance, land on the bushes in our garden and eat aphids at first. And once they get plenty of those, they would get up to their full adult size. And I think within a month or so, depends on their food source, how well fed they are.
So it takes about a month to be full. So it's like a month or to 6 weeks turnaround to get new spiders after the first one grow up.
Roughly, yeah. Yeah, it's been a little bit slow for me in my lab because I don't think I've got the right mix of food. As I mentioned, I'm started raising these black soldier flies, which are a fantastic food source. They produce small larvae that I can feed them, and that's I hope will get the rate of growth. So I've actually had them sitting around for 3 or 4 months, and they haven't matured fully. So I think I'm stunting their growth by not giving them the right kinds of things to eat. So, Rory Katz asks, aphids are Gerber food for baby spiders. Oh, sure, sort of. Yeah, something small and soft. Although even at the earliest ages, these guys can eat fruit flies. And again, the fruit flies, it's like the fruit fly is this big and the spider's a little thing jumping on top of it. But the spiders have the advantage of fangs and venom.
Yeah. So what have you learned from studying the embryo spiders?
From studying the embryos?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm working on a project right now.
Wow.
I'm trying to get off the ground, and that is I want to look at patterns of pigmentation, how those develop. So I want to figure out patterns. How do you make particular patterns in your body? Because they do it consistently for a particular species. Mainly, what I've been focused on for the last couple of years is first of all figure out what spiders are out there. I'm a total novice. I'm still struggling to master spider taxonomy, which means every once in a while I just grab a book and I throw it against the wall because, oh man, how many spiders are there?
So I'm still
But
trying to master basic taxonomy.
yes, you have to figure that stuff out first, and it's not easy. And then
Especially, sorry.
the other thing I've done is we did a survey of spiders in the community. So some students and I went out and we visited people's houses specifically to go into their garages and sheds and things like that. And we just counted spiders to see how many spiders there were in these environments and get an estimate for the population size in Morris. And we figured out there's like 2 spiders on average for every square meter of floor surface. So it's there's more spiders than you might expect living in your house.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still trying to learn basic technology, especially since I've now learned there's more than just the 7 they taught me back in elementary school or high school. There's like 50 million clades now I even knew about.
Seven. What? What's 7?
You know, the domain, kingdom, phylum.
Oh, those big picture sorts of pictures. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
because we've known that there's more than 30 phyla, for instance, since I was a wee young lad. So,
yeah. But then, like, there's all these in between things I never knew about till the last 10 years. Like with
uh-huh.
humans, like I until recently I never even knew about like the synapsids, the cydons, the thera- therapsids, all those different things on mammals that I knew about.
Oh, right. Yes, well, spiders are worse.
So I know they're in the arachnid group.
Yep.
What else is in there with them?
Oh, you'll also find things like solifuges and opiliones. And yeah, so let's see, I should step back. So solifuges are things like camel spiders. They're they're very impressive animals with gigantic chelicerae, gigantic
So
mandibles.
so camel spiders aren't actual spiders.
That's right. They're not true spiders. And then the opiliones, you probably know those as daddy long legs. So they're the ones with the little round bodies and the really long legs. Um, yeah, so that's related, but they aren't true spiders either. Uh, then of course there are scorpions. They're related. Ticks and mites are related. Spiders are not likely to bite you, but ticks and mites are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know all of them are together with the uh, arthropods. I think that next
Yep.
group.
Yep. And the insects are a subgroup of the arthropods. So distant cousins to spiders.
Yeah, it's all connected, all complicated. So, what brought about your interest as that? Was it recent interest or interest as a kid, or when you start?
Oh, I've been working with tropical fish for something like 40 years. So that's been my main focus for a long time. Uh, the reason I switched to spiders, well, there's two. One is early in my graduate school career, I got exposed to them. We had a visiting professor who studied jumping spiders, and in particular, the visual system of jumping spiders. So we did a bunch of work with those way back in, this was to have been, when was this, 1980? Yeah, it's been a while. So 40 some years ago. But it stuck with me because they were such interesting little animals and had such complex behaviors for something so small and simple.
Uh, in 1980, I was still mastering speaking and walking.
Oh, are you over 40 years old?
Yeah, I'm 42.
Oh, so yeah, I would have been playing with these spiders when you were born.
Yeah, the 98 is when I graduated high school. In my name.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty old in the YouTube community, but I guess it's not some people.
Yeah, you look who you're talking to. I mean, I'm an ancient withered specimen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I feel old sometimes because some of my classmates have grandkids now. So
oh, wow, yeah. Well, there's no hurry about having grandchildren. Yeah, when I was in my 40s, yeah, I just had a couple of kids who definitely weren't at breeding age yet. So
like,
it's
so you said you used to study fish.
yep, zebrafish. Yeah, zebrafish are another model system. They took off. This was in the 1980s again. The zebrafish was a model system proposed by a guy named George Streisinger, who was a geneticist and molecular biologist at the University of Oregon. and he just started raising them in his tanks. And the reason he was working with zebrafish is he went down to a pet store and asked them, "What's the cheapest fish you got that breeds rapidly?" And so that's why we started working with zebrafish. Um, but now they've taken off. They are now one of the fundamental model systems for studying vertebrate development, and the others are like mice. So yeah, and I did not want to work on mice because you got to do things like break their little necks, and they bleed, and they're kind of messy that way. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I remember reading about this. How long ago it was, but this weird fish experiment that somebody did about versus like natural selection versus sexual selection, and apparently they put these fish in ponds or rivers, whatever, and the ones with predator fish grew more camouflage to survive better, and the ones without predator
oh,
fish grew more bright for sexual flavors.
the pigmentation very. Oh, or are you thinking of sticklebacks?
And I think I forget what it was, but yeah, less predators, the
Yeah,
fish were more sexual selected with brighter colors. With more predators, they were more like, nope, we're hiding.
yeah. No, the example I know of, the classic example is sticklebacks. Sticklebacks have multiple morphs, and some of them are very smooth and unarmored and simple, and then there are others that are very spiky, and they evolve, become adapted to acquire spikes if they're in a rich predatory environment without many places to hide in. Okay, yeah, the bead says mice are too cute. I couldn't do it. I couldn't either. Seriously, I this was my big dilemma when I went off to graduate school, because as an undergraduate, I did a lot of work on vertebrates. I did neurosurgery on all kinds of animals like cats and dogs and even mice, and acquired a strong distaste for animals that have these kinds of distinct personalities and that want your affection and all this kind of stuff, and then cutting into them. No, I decided I could not do that. And that's why I went to tropical fish, is I could do that. Okay, Rory Cat says he could experiment with mice and he would eat all of them. Sure. Yeah. Yes, to be honest, every fall we get an invasion of mice fleeing the winter coming into our house, and we put out traps, and we do kill mice pretty routinely because otherwise they would take over. So
Yeah,
our our cat unfortunately will not eat any mice. He gets she gets very excited when there are mice in the house, and she will chase them around and she'll bat at them for hours and torment them until the mice are so groggy and ill and unhappy that they just lie there when we come along and scoop them up and throw them outside.
kind of like how an orca plays with a seal.
Yeah, that's it's pure torture. Cats are evil. Sorry, Rory, but it's true. You know it. Yeah, some mice have got it coming.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, a cat joke I heard a long time ago, like in the theist terms, like a dog looks like you like you're their god, and a cat looks like you like they're your god.
Yeah, cat behavior is a little more complex than that. I I joke that my cat is an evil cat, and he is kind of. She is kind of, because she was a rescue cat, and when we got her, she was severely mentally disturbed. She was kind of nuts. She was kind of terrified and practically psychotic. And we've been working on her, and she's getting better and better. Now she's almost friendly to my wife and I, not to anyone else. So yeah, we have an attack cat. So don't try to burglarize my house, anyone. That cat will shred you.
Yeah, I heard that some cats are like that because of massive inbreeding. They go,
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case here. It really was trauma.
uh,
Yeah, I will not blame genetics for something where she was abused. Oh, the Sisyphean bead asks, okay, which fish rapidly evolved in Lake Washington, Seattle? That was the stickleback. Yeah, there was some rapid changes in the morphology of sticklebacks in Lake Washington because it used to be that Lake Washington was disgustingly polluted, really practically opaque. And under those conditions, the sticklebacks didn't need spikes for defense. They could just hide in the murk and they thrived. And then we humans got around to actually cleaning up the pollution in the lake, and the lake got clearer and clearer. And suddenly the salmon were coming along and spotting all these delicious sticklebacks.
with no defense.
And yeah, and they started gobbling them up. And the ones that developed spikes could deter them from biting them. If you look at a spiky stickleback, it looks like a little bit like a caltrop with spikes in the top and all the sides. And yeah, you wouldn't want to bite into those.
So, er, the pre-thing you said you debate creationists. What do they have anything about your develop? Do they talk about your field of expertise, or they go off topic?
Oh, they immediately run away. Yeah, yeah. There's a video of me debating. Let me just emphasize: I do not debate anymore. I just refuse to do it. But I was confronted by some Islamic creationists in Ireland, and they started coming after me with all this nonsense about how the Quran accurately describes embryological development. And I told them, no, it doesn't. I've read it's like half a page of generalities. And as soon as I mentioned that, they asked, oh, well, how would you know? Are you a developmental biologist? And I said, yes. And so immediately they switched to talking about mountains in the Quran, geology. Like, I don't know much about geology.
So
So
you automatically lose then. You can't talk
that's what
about.
they think. Yeah. Yeah. If you can catch somebody on something they don't know, they've automatically lost. Yet I will freely confess right now that I don't know 99% of the science in the world. Sorry.
Are you saying that all scientists aren't automatically experts on every topic from biology to cosmology to anything?
No, the only people who are experts on on everything in science are creationists. At least they say so.
So, so you ever really have had a debate with creationists about embryology at all?
Yes, I have. I've it's come up in a number of my old debates many years ago. Like I said, I don't do it anymore. But I've been in a few. One of the common things they bring up are Haeckel's embryos, and that they get it all wrong. They don't understand it at all. Let's see. So many comments. Religion first studied science and got it wrong. Sort of. Let me just lecture you a little bit on the philosophy of science. Is that even now science is wrong about most things? That
Yes.
science is a process where you gradually acquire knowledge. And I would say, the early natural historians and philosophers, who were often very religious, were not getting it wrong. They were making speculative hypotheses, and many of those hypotheses later got shown to be insufficient or wrong. But yeah,
Well,
it's a tricky thing.
I think I think the difference is like back even back then or not, or more so now, is that the true ones didn't let the religious ideology prevent them from learning new things. Like, let's study this how this happens. Other people are like, this is how it happens because the Bible says so. So that nothing more to study here.
Yes, dogmatism is the opposition to science that they bring out, and uh, for centuries now, one way to look at it is religion has been constantly backtracking, that they've been walking away from their earlier presuppositions and adapting to the science of the day. The thing is, though, the scientists were also doing that. All the scientists who were arguing not on the basis of religion, but on the basis of empirical facts,
Yeah.
were also gradually drawing back from earlier conclusions. So we all been kind of doing this all along
Yeah.
together. The difference is, of course, that some religions and some religious people would take people who they disagreed with and set them on fire. And that's not a good approach. That's not how you resolve scientific debates.
Oh no, and like like one of them, like what's that Mary girl? She's like she's still a Christian. She's like a very famous scientist that creationists try to use her against her too.
Mary who?
Schweitzer.
Oh, Schweitzer. Yeah, that's a common thing that creationists bring up now. Is Schweitzer's the one who identified soft tissues in dinosaur bones, and people got very worked up about it, and I don't know why. I seriously, how do you determine how long a peptide chain is going to persist in this deeply embedded in rock? And we don't know. And so that's all she's basically saying is, yeah, we're finding these polymers embedded in deep in fossils where they've been protected from bacterial action. Of course, what the creationists never bother to tell you is that these chains, these polymers, have been extensively modified over time.
Yeah.
They've been degraded chemically and so forth. And even when Schweitzer was extracting them, they were encased in mineral sediments and needed to be treated to an acid bath to dissolve them out. So,
but no, that means that they're only 4,000 years old. So soft. It doesn't mean that possibly can't be that they survived that long. It means they're that young.
Right. Sure. Since we don't know how long these polymers persist in the environment, we can't use them as a dating method.
Yeah.
We have to use other methods, independent methods, to allow us to determine how old the specimen is. And those all say, yeah, these are 70 million year old fossils. So
yeah, the one thing I was hoping for when that happened, but it really it hasn't yet. I mean, they've kind of looked at the DNA a little bit of the dinosaurs, and they're connected to birds, obviously. But I was always hoping that they could like do. I mean, it's probably totally impossible to do, but we go to the fossils to get the DNA off of fossils, so we can more accurately sort them in their genetic trees.
Yeah, well, that's quite the pipe dream, because
Yeah.
no DNA has been extracted from dinosaur bones. That's not likely to happen. It's just been short peptides, and they've been highly modified.
Yeah.
And they also tend to be really common ones. Like I think some of the specimens from Schweitzer that she isolated were later sequenced to be fragments of collagen. And they showed some similarities to bird collagen, but that's about all they could say about it. Yeah, the oldest DNA specimens we've been able to extract are what, 40, 50,000 years old, something like that.
Yeah, I think like some Neanderthals or
Neanderthals, Denisovans, yeah.
Maybe some mammoths. But yeah, I was hoping we could finally determine if the tree we have a morphology of dinosaurs was really that accurate.
Oh yeah. Paleontologists are trying so hard with such minimal data. It's hard to determine. I mean, I'm still on the fence about whether these multiple species of, for instance, Triceratops are actually different species, or if they're different sexes or different ages.
Yeah, it's the thing I read about too is like I think it was whether it was like Tyrannosaurus or some kind of dinosaur that originally thought was a different species was actually the same species but different, all grown up.
Yeah, yeah, and that would be hard to determine because, yeah, how do you know? You've actually got to do developmental biology to figure that out, huh?
Yeah. Oh, another thing, science is. I always thought science is both weird and complicated. Like birds did not come from the bird-hipped dinosaur group. They came from the lizard-hipped dinosaur group.
Right. Yeah, but again, that's just because early taxonomists classified them by their morphology and by a single facet of their morphology, and so it's complicated, right? The transformations that had to have occurred to produce birds from dinosaurs are kind of impressive.
Well, they did have a few million years to figure it out.
Yeah, and as the bead mentions, yeah, some of the species you can at least say they're chronospecies, right? They're separated by such immense amounts of time that they can't possibly have been the same species. So yeah, we can partition that way, but it's tricky because if you just pick a single point in time and ask how many triceratops existed then, it's obviously not going to be just one, right? There's got to be a lot of them because that's the way biology works. It's like if you looked at antelopes in this time period, how many different species of antelopes are there? It's not just one. So drawing those distinctions is pretty tricky to do. And especially when all you've got to work with is morphology.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, they've had a lot of time to get everything back. I saw this meme one time that said that we look closer to Tyrannosaurus than Tyrannosaurus lived to Stegosaurus.
Yeah, right. Yes, the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous are huge spans of time, separated far apart. So, yeah, we tend not to appreciate that, which is particularly a problem when you've got a subset of our population that thinks the Earth is only 6,000 years old and everything got compressed into this narrow window of time.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't really science that told me that was wrong. It was history because I've always been a big history buff liker guy, and like I used to study. I used to like read all these books about the land bridge across America back in the Ice Age. And I'm thinking, like, wait a minute, how can there be Native Americans crossing the land bridge 10,000 years ago if the flood happened 4,000 years ago?
Oh, right, yeah, and that's a whole other thing. That entire era is that book by what is it, Jennifer Raff. Have you read this? Oh,
I might have.
It's called Origin. I highly recommend it. She wrote a book that's dissecting all the data, all the information that we have on the peopling of the Americas, and goes through and carefully figures out, what's reliable, what's not, what are the different kinds of evidence, like stone tools are one kind of evidence, genetic evidence, and that's what she studies, is another important piece of it, and does a really nice fine-grained study of how these two continents were filled with people like 13,000 years ago or so.
Yeah, I have a friend. I think you talked with him last week, a few days ago. Brainbug.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were talking about how arthropods were both first beat us on land and in the air.
Yeah, and when you look at the high school textbooks, they all show some amphibian-like thing crawling out on that it was a cockroach-like thing that beat them there.
And then later that they like insects beat us in the air like for a few million years too for any vertebrate got in the air. Pterosaurs, birds, and bats. insects got her first.
Of course, yeah. Insects beat us at everything, and they still rule the planet. Well, the bacteria rule the planet, but they do it on behalf of their overlords, the insects.
Oh, so so have you so have you ever studied about the spiders and stuff like that that lived back in the Carboniferous?
Yeah, the fossil record for spiders is really spotty. I mean, we got them going back to about 350 million years. So we've got a few of those.
So
Uh,
is that the Devonian?
yeah, roughly around there. So yeah, we've got them living on land then. Uh, it's tricky because there are so many different kinds of arthropods that were out and about. But spiders are distinctive because they, 8 legs, silk, that kind of stuff is kind of obvious, and it sets them apart. So we've got examples of that. One of the common things you do with the spider fossils is you flip it over and you look for spinnerets and see how sophisticated their web building abilities had to have been. But yeah, we got about 350 million years of spider ancestry that we can trace back to.
So when do you know when spiders branched off to form their own little group?
Oh, that would have been a long time ago. At least the Cambrian,
Cambrian.
Precambrian.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's before
yeah.
that's before even the chordates were a thing. I'm thinking.
Well, because when you look at the Cambrian biota, you already find lots of different arthropod forms. There's a huge literature on classifying these arthropods on the basis of their mouth parts and the shapes of their heads and how many segments are in the head and all that kind of stuff. Do they have antennae? All that sort of thing. And we can distinguish what was, a probable proto-ancestor to arthropods in the Cambrian. They obviously are not spiders yet. They're marine and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, I kind of expect that spiders and insects would have diverged, 500 to 600 million years ago, just as invertebrates and vertebrates diverged roughly 700 million years ago. So there's a long prehistory there. We just don't have fossils in those times because they were all gooey little wiggly things that didn't fossilize well.
So this is maybe like the Ediacaran period.
The Ediacaran, yeah.
This is another thing I didn't learn about more recently. Everything before that was just Precambrian. They were about the
right
specifics.
There's all kinds of subdivisions of the Precambrian era now.
So, hey, what's the recent thing you've learned in your studies like that you didn't know about before? You think
recent thing that I learned? Oh man, one of the things that's kind of interested me lately is social behavior of spiders. That many species of spiders exhibit communal behavior under the right circumstances. So even the ones I study, these black widow-like things, these false widows, which have a reputation for being solitary and kind of hostile. If you put them in the right environment, they will happily cooperate and live in these communal webs and feed on prey if it's readily available. Steatota borealis, it's a big bruiser of a spider. It's bigger than the ones I work with. And when you get into those, I've been finding places where they form gigantic colonies, swarms of hundreds of these spiders, all just living together and cooperating and catching prey and sharing everything. It's just, I think that's so heartwarming and sweet. It sort of reinforces Kropotkin's ideas about mutual aid.
So it's not a one for all thing. It's like a group effort. Spiders.
Right. If you take any spider and you put it into a cramped cage, and you don't give it much room to move, and then you throw in another spider, even of the same species, they will fight to the death. But then I would say the same thing happens with human beings. If you put them in a small cell and force them to live, in close quarters with some other human being, you will get all kinds of fights and ferocity and nasty things going on. If you give them enough food and if you give them space to spread out, they will reach an equilibrium and they will happily cooperate. We also see that in the big spiders that live out here in Minnesota. It's Argiope, which is related to Trichonephila, which is the one that you've probably heard about, the giant parachuting spiders that are invading the East Coast. Yeah, they're like that. They're big. They're about this big as my hand. And when you find those, they tend to live in great big communities where you will find a giant web with one spider in the middle of it, and then you'll find another one right next door to it. They don't compete. They don't need to. And also, what I find really charming is that the males are smaller, and a male will come along and build a small web right next to his lady loves. So he can live there and feast and just dart over and visit the female every once in a while and then dart back to his web. Yes, it sounds like Canada. Yeah, that's exactly it.
So you ever? I guess you never had the biggest craziness against spiders, have you? Or have you?
Have I ever what?
Had the biggest against craziness spiders or spiders?
No, I've never had a problem with spiders ever.
No, I meant the debate against.
Against creationists. Oh, there are a few creationists out there that use spiders in their arguments, and I dealt with one of them. This guy who's publishing with the Discovery Institute, whose name I forget. But what he was doing is arguing that, oh gosh, look at their webs; they are so intricate and complex. They must have been designed. Yeah.
Well, the design argument.
Yes, that's the level they come at it. But honestly, most creationists are so ignorant of basic biology, they're not going to bring it up.
Well, yeah, they are designed by spiders.
Yeah, or do you think they even care? Spiders are just vermin. That they wouldn't have even brought them on the ark.
They didn't need to be on the ark. They could survive on the water or on mats of vegetation. They say.
Okay. Yes. And also because the Bible says that they only brought on those animals that have breath in their nostrils, and spiders don't have nostrils.
So they were fine. They a few million tons of water is fine.
Sure. Yeah. Who cares? And that's the general attitude by creationists towards all of biology. They don't care unless they can distort it to fit their mythology.
So what's something that they've done that really pissed you off?
Well, everything.
Everything.
You mean one specific thing that really irritates me? Well, the problem I have, the most common problem I have with creationists is they're so lacking in creativity and so lacking in curiosity. We mentioned earlier that Kent Hovind, for instance, uses the same debate points over and over again. He's been doing this for 30 years, and he's never changed his script. It's always the same boring, awful PowerPoint slides. He just knows where they are, and he brings those up. But he doesn't learn anything new. He doesn't come up with any novel evidence.
It's still the six phases, the six steps, was it the six parts of evolution?
Oh, that stuff. Yeah, that's just pedantry. That's just him playing games with words. So it's even dumber than it sounds.
Oh, evolution is a religion.
Yes. That's what I mean is again, this is a good reason not to debate them, is because they're so damn boring. They always say exactly the same things, and they don't care what you say in reply. He's just going to roll right off of them, and they're not going to accept it at all. Kent Hovind had the definition of evolution given to him many, many times, and he still says the same stuff. He's never going to learn.
Yeah, for me, it was a more recent thing is I've always disagreed with creationists, but until recently, I didn't know how dangerous they were because most of them, like it's the creationists that are at least most of them are the ones that are leading the anti-vax movement too.
Right. Yes, it's crank syndrome. That all these different crank theories all seem to cling together. So yeah, you find somebody who's a creationist, you can find somebody who's probably also anti-vax and anti-this and anti-modern medicine, and yeah, all this stuff. It just clings together, and it's hard to separate.
Yeah, like I grew up Christian when I was growing up, you know, to church so recently. But yeah, I always thought, you know, the people that thought God can heal all things, the doctors were a friends thing, like a small friends thing.
Oh
But now
yeah.
I'm like they're multiplying now.
Uh-huh.
Like
That's
oh, I don't need to go to the doctor. Just pray the cancer away or pray the tumor away.
and it's always been lingering there. I mean, if you're going to recommend prayer for something, for anything, and you know it doesn't work, that's quackery. I don't care. I don't care how sincere you are in your beliefs, or whether you go off and get medical care in addition to praying. Just the fact that you let this idea of prayer creep in is poisonous, and it's not good for science that we do that. Oh, this like 20 mentions AIG recently mentioned a new book on why Darwin led Hitler and the Nazis. Yeah, and it's by the same guy who wrote about it before. It's ludicrous. Yeah, most the Nazis were Christians. Can we get that through their heads?
Yeah,
The
I think
majority, at
I, th-
least.
I think they think that the thing I heard like it's called social Darwinism is the same as natural selection.
Right, and it's not. And we can partly blame some scientists for that, of course. That there were many scientists who made an excessive extrapolation from the principles of natural selection to how we ought to govern human society, and that was disastrous. Yeah, Hitler didn't. Well, Hitler Hitler was a lot like creationist in that he really didn't know anything he was talking about. So Rory Katz mentions Hitler didn't think evolution was real. He still relied a great deal on Darwinian concepts and on evolutionary, you know, sort of popular abridgments of what they thought Darwin said. So yeah, but he did the Nazis, maybe not Hitler personally, but the Nazis did do things like ban Darwin's books. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Uh. God, I lost my train of thought for a second. Oh, he says he was a Lamarckian.
Well, so was Darwin. Yeah, this is something a lot of people don't realize is oh, it was Lamarck who had all that stuff about stretching giraffe necks and so forth. Uh, Darwin actually promoted a version of inheritance that involved inheritance of acquired characteristics and also blending inheritance and things like this. It's really unfortunate he had such a bad version of what would become genetics, and inheritance is central to his theory, and he got that part wrong.
Yeah, that's another thing is Darwin isn't the be all end all of evolution biology and stuff. He's got the ball rolling. And other people pick up the slack after him. He's not the almighty prophet of science.
No, no, Darwin represents a kind of ideal version of some aspects of science because he was really good at writing. I mean, his books are beautiful. If the way they're written is just spectacular and gorgeous. He was a master of communications. He had a worldwide network of fellow scientists who would be mailing him samples and ideas and books and interpretations. So that's kind of an ideal. And he came up with a revolutionary idea that was population based about how species would change over time. And that's pretty good for the 19th century.
Yeah,
Those were key things, and so we can admire him for that. But we don't think that everything Darwin wrote was gospel. We spend a lot of time criticizing some of Darwin's ideas.
but yeah, I was talking about that not Darwin, but science. Back in like last year, we were talking about how we learned that the Earth is around the sun, and not the other way around. That the flat earthers think
Uh huh.
that every discovery is able to find like uh, every science is able to find each other. Like Copernicus, Galileo, Newton,
Yeah.
Einstein, they're all built upon each other.
Yeah, and further, they're built on empirical observations. That if you want to discard a Newton, for instance, or if you want to discard Darwin, you still can't just pretend that the observations they use to build their ideas are false. That you have to have this gradual accumulation of observations and experiment that lead to modern ideas. So even if you say, okay, well, Newton's interpretations of physics weren't exactly right, we still have to appreciate that he did an awful lot with the observations he had. And you cannot come up with a new physics that says, no, everything Newton said was wrong. No, you can't. Because a lot of what he said was built on sound observations. And same with evolution. You can't just say, well, Darwin made a mistake about how bears evolved. Therefore, everything he said is wrong. Nope, you can't do that. You got to take into account all the stuff he said that was right. Yes, James Downard mentions Hitler's thinking was old school hereditary and racism, distant from 1930s evolutionary genetics. Yeah, that a lot of what Hitler was proposing, the kinds of eugenics he was pushing, and that others, non-Hitlers, were pushing, was actually more derived from agriculture.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a thing. Uh, Racists or presidents will be racist no matter what. They just get different ideas on how to be racist. If they can use evolution to be racist, they're fine. Use Christianity to be racist, they'll be racist. It doesn't matter what topic they'll
Yeah,
pick, they'll use it. Anything.
right. And actually, what the racists are doing is trying to rationalize the ideas they already had by mangling the science. Um, yeah, Rutherford has a really good book out called How to Talk to Racists, which I greatly recommend, which delves into all of these things. It's appalling how badly they understand the science. Same as with creationists.
Oh, by
Yes.
snail mail.
Yep. Yep. Darwin was the premier networker of his time. It's really impressive, all the stuff he was doing. And a lot of his mail is still preserved. There's this gigantic archive. It's at Oxford, I think. This huge collection of his correspondence, and it's still there. And there are historians of Darwin that are still going through them all.
Yeah, they had the internet back then, and Darwin and the Greg Mendel and all of them could all talk together through FaceTime or Zoom.
You're very optimistic about the value of the internet, aren't you?
No, but it could be good or it could be good or evil. But
Yeah, it could have been good, but then there would be the trolls that would show
yeah,
up
true. Yeah,
in Darwin's feed, and they'd be spouting all this stuff.
it'd be fast internet too. But I'm just talking about how they could interact with each other, the scientists, real ones, because this theory, combine this theory to this theory. So
yeah, it's a real shame that Darwin didn't know about Mendel's work. It could have really changed things. They published at roughly the same time. Darwin was 1859, and Mendel was 1863, 1864, somewhere around there.
Yeah. But oh.
Well, I hate to point it out, but we've been over at this for over an hour. I should probably be winding this up.
Yeah, you probably had stuff to do, more spiders to study.
Oh, I have to get ready for genetics. I'm on spring break, and it starts up again on Monday.
So you got classes to teach.
Oh yeah, a month and a half more of this, and then.
So you got a real PhD, unlike our friend Kenny, right?
Yes, it's the genuine, real thing. Yeah, from a verifiable, certifiable university. Yeah, no shortcuts.
Before we go, you might have any last minute questions for PZ about spiders, embryology, or fish, or whatever else he might know about.
Well, Rory says he enjoyed it, so yeah, we will also accept praise if you don't have questions. Oh yeah, I've talked to race realists. Yeah, I know. Race realists drive me nuts because you point out that they're wrong about the biology, and they immediately bounce back and say, well, then you reject all of evolution. You're a creationist in disguise. No, because those are different things. Misinterpretations of biology are not the same as evolution. Okay. Yeah, staying at a Holiday Inn, that's enough to get your IQ up. To match Kent Hovind, at least.
Nice. So anything coming up on your YouTube channel that you want to plug?
Oh, I have been so bad at maintaining my YouTube channel.
So have I.
I mean, starting this next week, I'll be posting genetics lectures again. And there's nothing exciting about those. It's all the basic genetics that everyone ought to know. I'm hoping to get back into it once I get all caught up in my grading and the class is moving smoothly again. Maybe I'll think of something I want to throw up there.
We do have one final question.
Do spiders count in base 8? Spiders don't count. They don't need to count. They've got operational methods of doing calculations. None of this human-centric mathematics for them.
Well, I don't have anything planned for next week, but that can change any time. So, do you have a catchphrase that you say? You have your own catchphrase?
I do not. Uh-oh. I've screwed. This is why all these other people get so much more traffic than I do. I don't have a catchphrase.
You should come up with one. Something. As I always say, never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. I'll see you next time.
Okay, very good.